Greetings and welcome to the July 2026 National University Speaker Series. My name is Dr. Nancy Rowland Heinrich, and I have the privilege of serving as the Executive Vice President of Community Engagement for National University. I am proud to be the founder and host of the National University Speaker Series. And since the inception of the Speaker Series in July 2020, we have held 69 episodes with an impressive group of presenters on very diverse topics. So tonight, we're very pleased to be able to present our 70th episode featuring Dr. Rice and Dr. Milliron. We truly appreciate all of you that are joining us, whether you're in our in-studio audience at National University's Spectrum Center or to all of you who are joining us from throughout the United States. And during the chat for our virtual audience, please feel free to share where you're joining us from. It's always very interesting. We know tonight we're not only welcoming many of the National University alumni, but we also have students, staff, faculty, and friends of the university that are joining us. National University prides itself on being in and of the community, and we truly appreciate our virtual audience who joins us every month for our speaker series. We hope that the next hour will be a very notable learning experience with our speaker and on the topic, because I think it's pretty relevant for everyone who's with us. So before we get started, let me just share a few things about National University. We were founded in 1971 by a retired U.S. Navy Captain, Dr. David Chagos, and we are very excited this year to be celebrating our 55th anniversary in November. The university has grown during that time frame to 50,000 academic students, enrolled in more than 150 different degree programs, and very proud of having an alumni base globally that is now at 255,000 students. National University, we consider ourselves to be difference makers, educating difference makers, and we are very proud of that alumni network and all our friends in the community who are joining us today. But it is now time to introduce today's topic and our speaker, Dr. Lee Rice. And the topic for today's episode, as you're aware, is your DNA is not your destination. So I think it'll be very interesting to get additional insights on that. What I'm proud to share is that tonight's moderator is Dr. Mark Milliron, the president of National University. He's a very renowned leader in the field of education, an author, a keynote speaker, and really considered to be an icon in higher education in the United States, where he has transformed universities, organizations, and communities worldwide. So at this time, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Milliron. Please note that we will have a Q&A at the end. Our virtual audience, please feel free to submit your questions in the Q&A online. And for our live audience, we have a microphone in the back. At this time, Dr. Milliron, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Hello. And I have the great pleasure of helping host and facilitate the conversation today, and it's a pleasure on multiple fronts, mainly because I'm doing anything to raise the flag for National University and the great work that Nancy and team have put together around the speaker series, which has been wildly successful. By the way, just won a major award with CASE, the Council for the Advancement and Support of Education. Let's give Nancy a big round of applause on that one. But I'm often brought in to facilitate some of the most intriguing conversations. And this is one I just jumped at when I saw it. And I didn't just jump at it because the speaker happens to be my boss. Okay. The Dr. Lee Rice is the chair of the board of National University. We are incredibly proud to call him our chair. He is an amazing leader. I feel completely blessed to have him as a mentor and a guide and somebody who's helping lead the way here at National University. But Lee, I want to kind of do a quick background conversation with you to kind of bring people in. You have been an icon in San Diego. In fact, we recognized you at our NU Gala as one of our humanitarians of the year, you and Mary, your wife, for your amazing contributions for this region. But go back, I mean, take us on this journey that brought you to wellness. This idea, you began your training in the military in the middle of the country, came out to the beaches of San Diego and helped really create the whole conversation around sports medicine as a thing. You actually helped fight the battles to create that entire discipline. Helped found, San Diego sports medicine, but you were also the founding doctor for the Clippers, for the Chargers. You're now a team doctor for SDFC. So still active and involved in sports medicine, but it feels like the Life Wellness Institute, which is one of your babies, and kind of rolling out this national conversation around wellness, has been a cause that is near and dear to your heart. Just talk a little bit about your background to let people know about what you're bringing forward in this. And before I get him off in this conversation, let's give him a big welcome round of applause. Okay, bring it. Talk about it. How'd you go from Missouri to this? Like.
Is this on? Can you hear me? So thank you. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm so proud to be a part of National University. It's just, National is doing some things for education that has never been done before. And it's just such an honor to be a part of this and to see the imprint that National is making internationally, nationally too. So it's really special, and to be a part of it is a privilege for me. So thank you for having me. Glad to be here. My journey started in medical school. And I thought I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon. I played sports and went to college with a football scholarship, and one that was an athlete. And I thought orthopedists were the athletes of medicine. That's what I wanted to be. Until I got in the Navy, and then I came out of the Navy. But while I was still in the Navy, I did some rotations at Balboa Naval Hospital, and I wanted to do orthopedic surgery. And so I did 2 different months rotating through orthopedic surgery, operating for 7 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I thought, my back doesn't like this. And then there's a bunch of things that just happened logically, luckily. And I became aware they were just starting the specialty of family medicine. And so I was the first cohort in the Navy of the first residency program that made general practice a specialty and created family practice. And they said, you don't call it GP anymore. Now we call it a family practice. And they said, you're going to be able to handle 90% of everything that goes wrong with everybody, and to know the 10% that you don't know and send them to specialists. And when I saw that and experienced what that was about, it occurred to me that I just was probably trying to please my father or something, wanting to be an orthopedist, that family medicine was where I was at. It was right for me. I really wanted the relationship with patients. I wanted to deal with people. I didn't want to stand in an operating room for 7 hours a day. I really wanted to help people and relate with them. And so that it just fit me. And once I saw that, I thought it was great. So I stayed with that, and I wanted, though, to take care of athletes' injuries, too, because I always had most of them myself.
Near and dear to your heart.
My other residents were sending me their injuries because they didn't care about that. And one of my rotations early on was with the San Diego Chargers. And I saw what the trainers were doing, not necessarily the doctors, the orthopedic surgeons and the general practitioners, but what the trainers were doing to treat injuries was way different than we were trained in the Navy to treat the Marines. So they would take an athletic, like an ankle injury, and they'd do, in the Navy, for the Marines, a short leg walking cast. And they'd be in the short leg cast for 2 weeks to 4 weeks, and then it'd take 2 to 4 weeks to get your full range of motion back, and another 2 to 4 to get your strength back and be back on the battlefield. Chargers were never even immobilizing it. They were doing early range of motion right away. And I thought, why are we teaching everybody what these guys are doing for professional athletes? So that sort of triggered a thing with me that I wanted to teach everybody preventative, not only injury prevention and treatment, but how do you not get injured in the first place? How do you do all those things properly? And then the whole field of sports medicine was just starting, and nobody was really interested that much in just taking care of athletes, but it was a need. And so there's a number of us, 4 of us around the country, who decided that, this ought to be something that was taught in family medicine programs. So we started the American Medical Society of Sports Medicine and created a fellowship training program for doctors who had already had a 4-year or 3-year initial residency, family medicine usually, or preventative medicine, or it could be emergency medicine. They'd take an extra year, and we'd teach them what we're learning from often trainers.
And just to make sure you all get how different this is. This is the equivalent of Dr. David Chigos, who founded National University, starting a university completely focused on non-traditional working and military students. It's not normal. And in the medical field, the idea of specializing in sport, which seems commonplace now in sports medicine, is like one of the normal things. You guys were like completely on the edge.
Well, we wrote a letter. We didn't write a letter. They wrote a letter. We went to the American Academy of Family Physicians and said, look, at our annual meeting, we need to have a little sideline where we teach some hours of sports medicine. And they called us, there was 5 of us that did that, and they called us the Gang of 5. They said, that's not going to happen here. And so we said, well, if they don't want to do it, we'll do it ourselves. And that's where we started our own society. And then we eventually wrote the questions and decided to make it a specialty and got approval from ACGME to make it a regular medical specialty. When I got out of the Navy, I wanted actually to start, and I did start, San Diego Sports Medicine Center. And it was a pretty iconic thing at the time because nobody was putting all those things under one roof. We had family medicine on one side, and then we had rehabilitative medicine, and then we had a gym where people could come and do a regular fitness center gym, or they could rehab. After they did the rehab, they could continue on their fitness training or not get injured in the first place. And then we had a wellness center where we were doing stations to station, figuring out all the risk factors for people, for their risk factors for health and disease. So we were doing wellness, we were doing physical therapy, we were doing family medicine, we were doing rehab medicine, and nobody was doing that in one center. We were the first center in the country to put it all in one facility, and it was really neat to do that. Yeah. And doing it, it became interesting to me that first it was just injuries, and then it was preventative injuries, and then it was fitness and training, and then it was sports psychology, and what we're looking at is family medicine, the way it ought to be practiced.
Holistic medicine.
Holistic medicine,
Yeah.
Whole person medicine. And so for about 20 years, nobody was interested much. When I started my practice actually in San Diego, my partner asked me, we had a brand new office next to Alvarado Hospital, and he said, what do you want on the door? And I said, well, Lee Rice, family practice, sports medicine. And he said, well, you can't have sports medicine. And I said, why? He says, because there is no such thing. and the other doctors would take offense. You're trying to be something there is. I said, well, that's what I do, so we're going to put that on the door. And so for 20 years of my practice, we took care of athletic teams, the San Diego State, and the volleyball, USA Volleyball for 20 years, Olympic and pro sports. And it became very clear that the very things we're trying to do for elite athletes, we should be doing for everybody. But nobody knew how to do that. And so eventually I got this idea with some others urging me on, why don't you start just a wellness center and focus on education, prevention, risk evaluation, and then making a business plan of people's wellness lives. So you say, okay, where did you start? Here, where you are right now. Here's what you tell me your symptoms are. Here's your family history. Here's your medical history. Here's what we found in our testing. Here's where you are, all in. Now, where could you be? And how can we help you get there? And how can we follow your value system to help you be there the way you'd like to be there? Who do you need on your team to support you? And how can we play a helpful role for you to help you get there?
No, I love it. I love it. And it really is this full circle journey of, like, again, bringing these pieces and parts together to tell this kind of larger story. I want to get on this pathway towards the conversation around the DNA not being your destination and the idea of that kind of intentional control you have about making the most of your kind of wellness journey. But I want to begin with, a lot of people begin with what are they most afraid of? What are the things that, if you look at the epidemiology of this and think about what are the things that are actually causing the most mortality in the United States, what are the big ones? What are the things that people are most afraid of?
What people are most afraid of is change.
Yeah.
There's two things people don't like. The way things are and change. So that's kind of the deal. So, but we know that the biggest cause of premature death in the country is heart disease. And the second is cancer. And so heart disease, cancer, and then injuries, accidents, and then there's all kinds of other things that are part of that too. But if you look at the major causes of death in our country, the risk factors that cause those things, that put people at risk for those, are primarily lifestyle. So you can't change, your age, that's it. And you're a male or a female, and you're whatever age you are, and if you didn't choose your parents wisely, then you got some problems at risk. But it turns out the genetics only cause about 15% of our total longevity. that 85% of how long we live is really based on our choices of lifestyle, our choices of how we live our lives, and even how we choose to think and feel.
Is, that realization, I think, has made the wellness world kind of open their eyes to this idea that we have over-indexed on disease and that we have not indexed enough on pathways to wellness. We're so focused on trying to mitigate risk, we're not thinking about optimizing kind of outcomes. And it's the difference between sickness versus, what's the Latin term? Arete. And arete is the search for excellence, right? And feel like the direction you're going. Just talk about how that has been a mindset shift. I think in the United States, there's more and more people talking about how we have to stop talking about just the genetic factors that link to these risk factors for death, but we're actually thinking now about how we actually build a pathway towards wellness.
Yeah, early on, like my first year in medical school, they gave me a stethoscope and an ophthalmoscope and an otoscope and a little short white coat. And they said, there's a nursing home over across the street from the hospital. Your job, Dr. Rice, they said, what do I know, anything? They said, your job is to go over there to the nursing home and look and feel and poke and prod and figure out normal from abnormal. Find out what normal heart sounds are like versus somebody who doesn't have normal heart sounds. And same with lungs and same with skin. Feel it and look at it and find normal from abnormal. And your job as a doctor and a student doctor is to figure out what's abnormal, to figure out what's causing it, to come up with a list of potential things that might be, come up with a diagnosis and treatment plan or a evaluation plan to figure out what it actually is, pin a diagnosis on it, and then treat it. And once you've treated that, you've got the patient back to no more pain, your job is done. Way to go. And they left out the entire category of weller than well. And the whole thing now in wellness is everybody in this room, everybody here could be a little bit weller. Everybody could have a little more energy, a little better sex life, a little better sleep at night. They could have their purpose a little more clearly defined. There's nobody here that couldn't feel and act and function just a little better than they always are. And I think there's a universal human desire to be more than we've been yesterday. And there's even a healthy way to be ill. So our job, there's a continuum of not just diagnosing and treating disease, but to find out where somebody is all in life and help them enhance everything that they'd like to enhance in life, not only to have a longer life, but quality of life, meaning of life, purpose in life, and joy. That's what we really want. We want to feel fulfilled. We want to have meaning. We want to have purpose. And at the end of it, say, I'm glad I was here, lucky to whatever my deal was. Thank you.
And it's one of those kind of like horrible realizations that your behavior, your activities, your mindset is perfectly designed to get the outcomes you're getting right now, right? Like how that comes together. And to that end, I want to talk about you talk about the three kind of major determinants of wellness being this combination of, genetics is a part, but it's genetics, epigenetics, and your mind. Unpack that a little bit for us and how they interrelate.
Well, first of all, understand that epigenetics, how many of you know about epigenetics? If you do, that's good. So if you don't, take this home with you right now. The epigenome are made up of proteins that sit on top of or next to our genes. It's epi, so epigenetics. And the epigenome actually turns on or turns off the expression of our genes. So you may be born with the genetic predisposition to have
the trigger,
colon cancer, but how you choose to live your life, how much you weigh, what you eat, whether you exercise or not, whether you abuse substances, all those things modify the by epigenetics, the expression of that gene. And so the expression is under the control of us. So it is, genes load the gun, but behavior and environment pulls the trigger. And so the good news is if we can learn what the triggers are, what the key things are for most of us to be well, we can change our own destiny. It doesn't have to be just because my mom and dad or my family was always this way. That doesn't have to be your way.
I mean, that's an important, again, the realization that it's just because this might come up as a marker in your DNA test, that has nothing to do with whether or not that's going to show up. The epigenetics are it's a big deal for whether or not, and that is so based on mindset and behavior. Right?
Yeah, we used to think when we finally discovered, when the first person in the world sequenced his own genome, Craig Venter here in San Diego, We thought I did 2 years of genetics. I did a master's in genetics before I went to medical school. I love genetics. I thought when we finally have the human genome figured out, we'll know the secret to illness and disease. Well, when that was first done, the company that Illumina here in San Diego, they donated 2 sequences to us at a meeting, and they asked me to sort of explain to people what that meant and how to do it. It was $10,000 per genome at that time. And so I talked to their geneticist back in New York and said, give me all the mutations that each one of those 2 people have, and what do those mean, what do they code for, and so forth. And at the end of it, I said, okay, well, now, at the end of that, thank you for spending that 2 hours with me on the phone telling me all about this. I've got it all on my computer. Now, what do I tell them that this means? And she said, well, we really don't know.
Oh, no.
And so the reality is exactly what you said. Genomes and genes basically code for certain things, but they don't cause things to happen. They're just risk factors. And we can change our risk factors. In other words, behavior trumps genes. And that's the key. Even identical twins, separated at birth, raised in different environments, die on average of 10 years apart.
I mean, it really is eye-opening. It's also one of the reasons why people have to take a deep breath before they do they do the big the DNA scans, and they come back assured that they're going to get this, or this because of what the risk factors are within.
That's right. The very few things are single gene determinant diseases.
Yeah.
Most things are multi-genetic, and it's a whole bunch of genes all working together, and behavior, environment, and the mind. So it is behavior, it is environment, it is genetics, but it's also your mind. And the mind is probably the most powerful of all those things, the least appreciated in terms of power.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the metaphor I've heard before is one of the things you realize is your life is you're actually creating a recipe. You're putting up a whole bunch of ingredients together that are going to come out in a certain way based on how you combine those ingredients. And one of those ingredients you talk a lot about the idea of being able to connect the human microbiome, in this, and talk a bit about the microbiome project and what we've learned from that and how that fits into this.
Sure. Yeah, we are what we eat.
Yeah.
It turns out that there are more cells living in us and on us than we have of our own cells. Isn't that interesting? So fungi,
We're a carrier.
fungi, bacteria, and viruses that live in us and on us. Every one of those cells that lives in us has a DNA, and their DNA interacts with our DNA, and that controls our immune system response. It controls our inflammation. It's amazing.
There's a lot of people in here who are weirded out right now.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you get the concept here that there is more on you and in you than you yourself. Like, you're a carrier of these things, and how you interact with that has a big deal about whether or not what kind of outcomes happen for you. Talk about what we've learned in that over the last 10 years has been like an eye-opening experience.
It's been really totally eye-opening. We've found that based on the bacteria that are in our gut, for example, those bacteria, I'll give you an example. We know, everybody knows about serotonin, right? Well, there's more serotonin created in our gut than there is in our brain. And that controls happiness, it controls mood, it controls sleep, it controls appetite, all those things. So the bacteria that we have in our gut are programmed to do certain things for us, and everything is finely balanced in our body. Every system that we have is intricately, finely balanced, one with the other. And we are what we eat. Every cell in our body is sourced from food. And most of our cells, every 90 days, turn over. And so we're not even the same person we are physically as we were 90 days ago. And so what we find is that if we eat properly, clearly the evidence-based medicine says that the best diet we've ever seen is most of calories should come from whole food, plant-based sources. That's not that you can't have meat and so forth, but whole food, plant-based sources, unadulterated, unbastardized, unhomogenized, unprocessed foods. Whole foods are the ones that have the greatest protein, the greatest minerals, the greatest trace elements, the greatest antioxidants. They're the ones that help us the most. And those coordinate our microbiome. And our microbiome coordinates our defense system, and it coordinates our immune response. And then the other things, how well we sleep at night helps us digest food better. So it all goes hand in hand, one with the other.
No, I love this, and it is this idea that I've heard the analogy made before that people, if they begin to think of food as medicine, because people think they need to take a pill or they just change this, but they begin to think about the food you're eating has far more impact on your mood, on your health, on your outcomes. That whole notion of food as medicine makes people be far more intentional about what they put in their body.
Yeah, food actually is medicine.
Yeah.
Food is, and if they've shown, have you ever heard of fecal transplants? If you want to be weirded out, I had a patient actually go to Germany. She had ALS and was given about 6 months to live, and went to Germany, had a fecal transplant, changed her whole microbiome, changed her whole immune system response, and she lived about 2 more years.
Oh, wow.
And right now there are over 200 scientists and I think over 20 universities worldwide that are studying the human microbiome and looking at samples of the human gut and the feces, and what does the DNA and the microbiome look like in somebody who's overweight versus normal weight, who's diabetic versus not diabetic, who's got some chronic disease versus who doesn't, and what's the best microbiome to prevent that disease or that condition. And we don't know. They're trying to collect 2 million specimens from people, 2 million specimens, and then with computer learning, they can aggregate. Computational biology is amazing how fast they can aggregate information, figuring out all that data to find out what's the healthy diet for somebody with this particular thing. And we're coming to personalized medicine. So the right diet for you will not necessarily be the right diet for somebody else. It'll be based on your family history, how you feel, how well you sleep at night, what your own microbiome looks like, and how do you purport that.
Yeah, that's such an important thing because people are always looking for the one-size-fits-all answer. And the truth is you have to find the thing that fits you, like the thing that's going to fit you in some ways. We were talking this morning a little bit as been preparing for this, talking about there's a wonderful book called The End of Average, and Todd Rose talks about the Air Force trying to design airplanes, and after World War II, they wanted to use advanced data to be able to design the perfect airplane, and so they took measurements of every single pilot in the Air Force and put together all those measurements to create the perfect cockpit and for perfect controls for an airplane, and produced this airplane and spent millions and millions of dollars on it. And suddenly, when they were doing the testing on it, they kept crashing the airplane. The airplane just kept crashing, and they're like, what is happening? And what they found out was when they talked to the pilot said, we hate this airplane. And they're like, how could you hate it? It's like based on it's like the perfect airplane. It's based on you. And what they discovered was the airplane's cockpit was based on everyone, but perfect for no one. It had so many like little things that were off. And so that was actually the beginning of creating all these little adjustments in there. They actually allowed you to move your seat, move this, move that, and those adjustments made it perfect, made it work really, really well. By the way, they stole that for cars. They started using that in cars and changing it. But that's kind of the same thing with diet, is realizing it's different adjustments based on who you are. You might need different kinds of macronutrient mixes based on if you're a power lifter or if you're a ballerina, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And based on your genetic predisposition, you may digest certain foods other than better. We know about gluten. Everybody's worried about gluten, right? Our daughter has gluten enteropathy, so she can't have wheat, right? But if she stays away from that, she can be just fine. But everybody's looking for the magic supplement, the magic pill, the magic this or that, and then I'll be fine. They don't want to pay the price for a healthy lifestyle, which takes dedication, it takes monitoring. I was talking with a shaman one time about that, and I said, there's never has been a magic pill. People always come in wanting the magic pill. And he says, nope, there never has been a magic pill, and there never will be one. But he says, there is magic. I thought, yeah, you're right there.
No, I love it. Well, we're talking about the things, again, the things you can control as you're doing this balancing act between your genes, your epigenome, and your kind of mind, body, spirit kind of work within it. Obviously, beyond nutrition, a big part of this is exercise. So talk a bit about what we've learned about exercise as, again, this pathway to wellness, not just in response to physical therapy out of an injury, but actually as like keeping yourself healthy and well as you're going forward. What are we learning around that?
Well, what we know, we've known this for a long time. We've known everybody should exercise, right? But now we've got good evidence-based medicine that tells us why. And in medical school, we were taught the rule of the artery is supreme. And nothing's ever been more true than that. We were made to move. The minute you stop moving, those parts that aren't moving any longer start to atrophy. And so we learned right away, if anybody here had their hand or arm in a sling okay. Yeah. So if you're in a cast for 2 weeks and you take the cast off, you can't straighten your arm out because the muscle tendon units shorten to that degree of length that you exactly have them, have to move to. And so our body loves to move. Movement is key, and the minute we stop moving, our body starts to atrophy. And that has to do with our bone density, has to do with our muscle strength, our muscle elasticity, our range of motion. When we move, guess what? Everything helps. Our brain neurotransmitters are enhanced by exercise. Sleep is enhanced by exercise. Appetite is enhanced by exercise. Digestion is enhanced by exercise. Everything we do, it's all balance, moderation, and attitude, really, perception. But exercise is so important to everything. There's a guy that did a lot of wellness work early on, and he talked about it. If somebody has 4 bad habits, they want to change their weight, they're smoking, they're drinking too much, they're not exercising, they can't sleep, they're using pills. What's the first thing you do? He says, the first thing you do is just take smoking. He says, the first thing you do if you have somebody want to stop smoking, start exercising. Because the exercising body doesn't want to do something that's interrupting their exercise. So exercise starts making people feel better about themselves. They start exercising, they look in the mirror, and in 1 week they go, I'm looking better already. They haven't changed a thing, but they think they have because they feel better. So exercise changes your psyche, it changes your personal self-esteem, it changes the way you feel about yourself, and it helps you feel like you're becoming your best self. So exercise is a key cornerstone to any kind of habit change in your life, especially a lifestyle habit.
And then you have to do the work to figure out just like with nutrition, you got to figure out the exercise that's for you. You might be a yoga person, you might be a power lifter. Like you have to figure out the aerobic and anaerobic mix, but that's going to be just a process of learning and kind of working with your doctor, working with your trainers. And we're kind of learning it almost doesn't matter what, it matters that. Right?
That's right. Yeah. It's not what you do, it's how you do it and why you do it. And people say, well, what's the best exercise for me? And I say, well, what do you love? What is it?
What will keep you exercising?
Yeah. What do you like to exercise by yourself, or do you like to do it with people? What kind of a person are you? What gives you joy? Because if you don't enjoy it, you don't like it, it's not easy for you to do logistically, you're probably not going to keep it up. So, but we've learned that there's a number of types of exercise. There's strength training. And one of the things we're seeing now is that most people over the age of 60 or 65 have a word that wasn't even in the medical lexicon when I was in medical school. It's called sarcopenia. Not having enough sarcomeres, muscle tissue, not having enough muscle to do daily life well without undue risk of injury. That's sarcopenia. But if you don't exercise, you lose that muscle mass and muscle tone. So the average person after age 35, the statistics a number of years ago were the average U.S. person after age 35 loses 1/2 pound of muscle mass per year and gains 1 pound of fat per year. So by 55, it's not a pretty picture. So strength training is very, very important. And the older we get, very interesting, the biggest risk factor we have for many older people is falls. And the reason they have fall risk is because their coordination, their agility, and their strength, just things like getting up and out of chairs, coordinating their balance once they have a misstep, becomes a problem. And so strength training is very important. Also flexibility, because again, use it or lose it. So if you don't take your body through an entire range of motion, you lose that motion. And many people, we live our life often just flexed, and so we have to go, every flexion, you have to have an extension. So using your entire body through a full range of motion on a regular basis is very important. Some people genetically are just gifted. They can put their foot behind their head, no problem. And other people have to work to touch their knees. So whatever the personal thing is for each person, you have to look at that. So strength training, flexibility training, agility and coordination training. We have proprioceptors in our muscle tendon units that help us know where our body is in space.
Yeah, that's where balance is such a big deal.
So if I'm not drunk, I can, with my eyes closed, I can take my finger and touch my nose, right? But that's because proprioceptors tell my body where it is in space without having to go to my brain and then back to my arm to tell me where to go. If you don't train those proprioceptors, things that require balance and coordination, you lose them.
That's fascinating.
And so athletes have to regain all those things by retraining them.
Again, it's use it or lose it. You have to actually get in there and do it.
That's
You're
right.
kind of moving it together. As you're balancing your food intake and you're doing the right kind of exercise, the kind of thing that everyone's talking about right now is that there is no drug you can take that is more powerful in impacting your wellness and health and stress reduction than sleep. Like, sleep is that important. Talk about what we're learning on the sleep
Yeah,
side.
sleep is one of the most underappreciated factors in a healthy lifestyle. It's one of the domains of wellness that's really critically important. Studies show that the average adult needs between 7 and 8 hours of sleep per night. That's average. Many people think they're doing fine if they just have 5 or 6, you know. And it used to be kind of I'm a man's man, I don't need any sleep. And now we know that while we're sleeping, the brain is not just sleeping. The brain is restoring our neurotransmitters. It's restoring our chemicals. It's learning all the things we've learned and been exposed to during the day. Our brain stores those things in the right files at night so we can retrieve them the next day. Studies have shown students, for example, who sleep between getting material and getting tested about that material, they test better, they remember more, greater memory, better analytical ability about those things than people who are given the information and then tested right away.
I actually read a study once that was talking about circadian rhythms in sleep, and it was saying that younger students, if you let them sleep in, because that's their normal circadian rhythm is to sleep in later, and then take their classes in the afternoon and their early evenings, their test results are literally 10 to 15% higher. The problem is the people they're learning from have the opposite circadian
right,
rhythm.
yeah,
Right?
yeah. Well, I was at a conference 2-3 months ago at Salk, and they had one of the world's experts in circadian rhythms. And what he was saying is that every organ in our body has its own biological clock. And not every organ is on the same time frame. So the stomach and digestion has its own clock, our brain has its clock, our heart has its clock. And unless you're getting normal circadian rhythms for everything on a regular basis, rather than like shift workers have a really hard time doing that, our immune system becomes compromised. Our aging becomes increased, and risk factors for things like cancer go up and heart disease. So that sleep is really important. We say the sleep experts say it's important to get up at the same time every morning, because that's going to cue your body to feel tired at the right time for you to go to sleep at night. And so the consistency of sleep and wake is very, very important for cortisol, for hormones, stress hormones. All those things have their own natural rhythms, and they go up and down based on timing. And if we're not doing the sleep well, none of those things are going to be working for us.
And all that like plays into that whole notion of stress management, because stress is the silent killer, right? So many people don't take stress seriously, but the idea of figuring out how you can use this combination of eating right, exercising, sleeping well, creating a rhythm and pattern in your life is, and a big part of that is managing stress and figuring out how you adapt and connect with stress, because people, don't realize how damaging that is to the human body.
Hugely damaging. And that's why I say the mind, of all those things, behavior, environment, genetics, the mind is the most powerful. And most people, interestingly, give that power away to the world. They let the world determine how they feel, what their attitude is, what their priorities are, etc. You made me angry, you made me mad, you made me do this, whatever. And we have the power inside to determine our attitude. Happiness is an inside job. And stress is unrecognized stress, especially anxiety, chronic anxiety, it's a killer. Chronic anxiety, people, when they are chronically anxious, they go to habitual things, behaviors that are not healthy, they're maladaptive, but that's how they cope. And so we say we're all addicted to the pain we know. We don't like it, but we're comfortable with it because we know it. And even though we don't want to risk change.
They create a rhythm, even if it's a bad rhythm.
Yeah. Right. So understanding who we are and what we're doing and how we're feeling about things. We live in a fast-paced life now, and half of the key to wellness really is about slowing down your pace, mind-body connection, being mindful of how you feel, paying attention to what that feeling is telling you. What is this feeling about, and what is it feeling telling me, and what should I do to honor that feeling? And how do I understand myself well? Because my feelings will tell me who I am, and my feelings will tell me whether I'm selling out on my values or not. We say there's a couple things. You have your values and your behavior. And to the degree that your behavioral choices are inconsistent with your core values, that's the degree to which you have stress. And if you have stress in your life, you're not going to be able to handle moderating your behaviors in a way that's most healthy because you're too busy running away from your feelings. So understanding your feelings, listening to those feelings, and living your life according to what your true values are. Do I value my health? We ask everybody in wellness programs, what are your core values? Well, I value my health. I value longevity. I value my friendships. I value this and that. How about your behaviors? How are you doing 24/7 with what you're choosing to do with your time? Are you honoring all those values or not?
Are they in alignment, right?
That's right, because the degree you're not in alignment is the degree which you have stress, and the degree you have stress that's inflammatory, and inflammation is the killer. Anything we do that imbalances our life, from exercise to eating to sleeping to relationships, anything that's out of balance increases inflammation, and inflammation causes apoptosis, which is cellular death, causes premature aging of cells. It increases our risk for cancer and plummets our immune system.
And we end up with all autoimmune diseases that are so driven by it.
Bingo, yeah.
Yeah. I want to stay with the mind for a second, because this kind of mind-body health, one of the things we've really embraced at National Universities is this idea of wellness across the board. And because we call our students Anders, because our students aren't primarily a student. They're a student and a parent. They're a student and an employee. They're a student and deployed, whatever it might be. And because we design for ands, what we know is our students have more complicated lives. And so this conversation about wellness is a big deal, because education is a part of their improvement. It's a part of a wellness cycle if they do it in the right way. So it's important for us to help them think about what's the best way to do this. How can we help you do this in a really healthy way? One of the things we've learned in student success research over the last 15 years in particular is that if a student doesn't have a clear why, if they're not crystal clear on their purpose for why they're doing education, it is very difficult for them to be successful, and they do begin to spiral in all kinds of other ways. Talk about the power of people really doing the why work, because if they can get to that purpose, to that why, a lot of the other things we're talking about begin to align, because you suddenly realize, oh, why that is that important. I've got to start aligning my behaviors, aligning my nutrition, aligning my exercise. Talk a little bit about it.
Well, Viktor Frankl is my hero for that. He wrote Man's Search for Meaning, and he found out through Auschwitz experience that the people who were able to survive that ordeal and come back and have meaning and process in their life were people that had a why. And
If you haven't read that book, you have to read it.
It's a fabulous book. And Edie Yeager, another PhD, a psychiatrist here in San Diego, actually just passed away this last year, said there's no healing without feeling. So knowing what your why is, knowing who are you, I like everybody to have a personal mission statement. Here's why I exist on earth. Here's my purpose in life. And I like families to have a family mission statement. Why are we here as a family? We're only here for a certain number of years together as a family. How do we honor each other and our family by having purpose in it? And what we find is that people who have clarity of meaning and purpose have the most fulfilled life. They have the ability to balance their lives in the way that they find best. And they have support from each other. And they're not afraid to be who they are. The why is the key. And it's really hard to change a habit unless you have a why. And as I say, happiness is an inside job. But Viktor Frankl had the great statement. He said that he talked about just people surviving difficult things. And he said they can take away every one of your freedoms except your last freedom. And that's your freedom to choose your own attitude in any given set of circumstances. And your attitude, if that's based on your why, then you've got a determination to be that, And if you don't have that why, when exercise becomes tough, I'm not going to do it because I don't need to do that anyway because there's no why behind it. The why gives you clarity of meaning and purpose. And absent meaning and purpose, then you're just sort of adrift and throwing darts at a board.
I've heard it described metaphor as basically your why becomes gravity, because if you've got the gravity, things can rotate around it and balance around it. But if you don't have the gravity, things just go out and kind of go everywhere. So it's the idea of centering around something, right?
It really is important. And the why not only helps you through the tough times, but it helps you be successful.
Yeah. Talk a bit about one of the things you do in the kind of wellness retreats you've done for years is you have people begin to architect their new story, to kind of get in touch with that why, think about all these other elements of it, and kind of the before and after of that conversation. I think it's really powerful.
Yeah, we all tend to have a story that we tell ourselves. Here's who I am, and here's why I am that person, right? It's because of my parents, it's because of my genes, it's because of the way I grew up, it's because I was an athlete, or I wasn't an artist, or I couldn't dance, whatever it might be. But here's me. And we box ourselves in to this thing. And we place limits on ourselves. And man lives far too far on self-imposed limits. And so we oftentimes in wellness programs, we have people come in and they say, okay, why are you here? what would you like to change? Well, I'd like to exercise more. I'd like to be thinner. I'd like to sleep better. I'd like to, whatever it might be, have more energy, sexual fulfillment, whatever. And then why haven't you been able to do those things in the past? And then they write down there's reasons for that. And then we have them read those letters to each other in the first day of the event, and they say, okay, here's why I've got this problem, and here's why I've got this problem. I don't have time to exercise. I'm too busy. I don't have the money to join a gym. I've got, my family needs me too much, and I got, blah, blah, blah. All the rationalizations, everything with addiction. I do a lot of work with addiction, and addicts do three things always to maintain their addiction without having to face the truth. They rationalize why they do what they do. They minimize how much of they do, and then they lie about the frequency of it, so rationalize, denial. They deny that it's causing a problem. This is not my problem, it's somebody else's problem. So these are all the reasons why I'm the way I am. And then going through insight therapy and talk therapy and having some mind-body business where they talk about really who am I, looking in the mirror and admitting the truth. That's the hardest thing for many people to do. Look in the mirror and say, this is the truth about me, warts and all, and I'm still a beautiful person. It's okay to be me. Nobody's perfect.
I'm still becoming.
But yeah, but we all want to be perfect. Nobody wants to. We say we have the mask and the shield. We want. Here's what I think what I want. I want to be what I think you want me to be. And if you get too close, I'm going to poke you with my sword. And I got the shield to keep you away if you get too close to me. And the truth is, putting down the mask and the sword and the shield and just being who you are and trusting that if you are who you are, and have some transparency about that, humanity and all, the world will love you in spite of it. And in fact, because of it. I love you because of your humanity, not because of what I think might be perfect, because I can't reflect on perfection because I know I'm not perfect.
So by the end of this process, they're rewriting their story.
So at the end of the night, they write down, when they've been through this, they write their new story. And the new story starts with 3 words, everybody's new story. The truth is. The truth is, I've just been a lazy bastard and I can start exercising anytime I want, whatever. And tomorrow morning, I'm going to put my walking shoes by my bed, and when I wake up, I'm going to put them on, and I don't care if it's raining or shining, I'm going to go for a walk. And the guy who doesn't have that purpose, when it's rainy, well, I'll stay in bed and I'll do it tomorrow. So the new story starts with, these are my core values, this is who I'd like to be. When I get there or on my way there, here's how it's going to make me feel about myself. And here's the joy and the meaning and purpose that's going to give me in my life. And here's how I'm going to be that way. And then we actually have them write a letter to themselves. Let's say that you could do everything you say you're going to do for a wellness life, and you do that well for the next 6 months. Pretend like you're Mark what was your name as a child? What was your kid's name?
Oh, my.
What'd they call you?
My dad called me Skidmar. Which
Okay, Skidmar. Okay, wasn't Skidmark? Okay, sorry. So you write a letter like you were. It's called being your best self and reparenting yourself as a child, right? Yeah. How would you feel about yourself? How proud of yourself would you be, knowing if you were talking to your child? If your child would do that for that length of time. So you write a letter to yourself. Dear Skidmar, thank you for doing all these things for the last 6 months. Here's how I feel now. Here's what I've learned. Here's the process of learning. Here's who you are. Congratulations, I love you. Warts and all. And we actually collect those letters as if somebody's writing to themselves if they've done that 6 months from now. And then we mail it to them. And they've forgotten all about it. And then they get these letters 6 months, they open it up, and it's the letter to themselves as a child, tears everywhere. But knowing that we can change our story, knowing that we can become way more than we think we can become, but it takes support to be able to do that. It's hard we say we're all addicted to the pain we know. Yeah. I've got these sculptures in our office. One shows this person's back is like in a pretzel. And bent over carrying this rope, and attached to the rope is a bunch of boxes and stuff. And you can see all they have to do to get rid of the back pain is to open their hand and let go of the rope. Yeah. But they're never going to do that unless they're going to be feeling like life will be okay without their dominance. That's the pain we know. To let go of that rope means I've got to go where I've never gone before. Change. And we say that's the step you've got to take. Nobody can take that for you. That's the leap of faith you've got to take. Life can work out without your dominance. That's where faith comes in. And that the last thing is, that's the only step you have to take that by yourself. Nobody can do that for you, but you don't have to do it by yourself. And that's where alliance comes in. The last sculpture is people holding hands. If you've got friends and relationships that you know people care about you, you know they're going to be there for you, you can use those people. We say friendship doubles our joy and divides our grief. When we fail, we've got somebody to pick us up and tell us, you know, you're better than that. I know you can do it. I'm here for you. And then that gives us the hope to try again.
No, I absolutely love it. It is, it's a killer perspective. You know, I did martial arts for years and years, and during one of my trips, I was in Singapore, and actually went to one of the Shaolin temples there from the diaspora, and one of the meditation exercises they do there, because their big thing about the art, you're not going to get to the white hand, black hand, but especially the white hand, which is the healing of yourself. And one of their core meditations is they call it your 90 meditation, where you're supposed to sit and imagine yourself at 90 having a conversation with yourself about what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
And the dialogue is about, like, you know, are you doing the things that put you on the path towards where you want to be at 90? It was fascinating as you kind of go through the exercise, but it's that kind of mindfulness that you do such an amazing job of bringing this conversation to a level where people are thinking about all these pieces and parts: exercise, nutrition, mind, body, spirit, why. It all kind of comes together to be really powerful. Thank you for helping us think. Let's give him a big round of applause.
Thank you.
So good. So good. So we're going to open it up for some Q&A if there are folks here. I think I see Nicole back there kind of beginning, but we got a microphone back here. We can bring it to you, but if you got questions, we'd love to hear.
And we also have, online it's blowing up, where first of all, people have
I hope
just
that's in a
so
good way.
enjoyed. In a very positive way, because they're just absolutely impressed with all the information. I think they'd like to listen to you for hours. But at this time, we'll go ahead and turn the question over to Nicole, and then we'll select a few of the online questions.
Thank you so much. This conversation has been absolutely fascinating. And you've talked tonight a little bit about the stories that we tell ourselves and those self-imposed limits that come with them. And I keep coming back to our students in higher education. We see students that arrive carrying stories about themselves, that they've convinced themselves, I'm not math person, I don't write very well, I can't do this. There's so much that many of our students walk in the door with. I've tried this before and I have failed, and am now trying again. So if our DNA is not our destination, and I think you've established that really well, I wonder if our personal narrative also doesn't have to be a destination either. So as educators in this space with Anders, how do we help our students rewrite those stories? And for somebody who is such an advocate for our institution and our students, what role do you believe that an institution like ours, the NU, what is our role in helping students see possibilities for themselves that they can't even imagine yet? In your mind, what does that look like?
Wow. Nicole, what a good question. I think, all of us in life, I think, my view, have had somebody that's very important for us. I'll give an example. There's a guy's name's Joe Ehrman, true story. He was written up in Parade magazine as the most important coach in America. And he was an old Baltimore Colt lineman, right? He had a picture of him with mud on his face and holding his mask down on the sideline, looked like you'd tear your heart out. And the story was written about him, and a book was written about him. It's a good one. It's called Season of Life. And he decided that he wanted to change the way America works, and he changed relationships because he felt like everybody learning the three lies of masculinity. The most important guy was the one who could run the fastest or jump the highest, the best athlete when you're young. And then later, as you get a little older, it's who got the homecoming queen for the date. So it's sexual conquest. And then later on, it's power in the boardroom, money and effort and all that business. Great guy. He was assistant high school coach for a small private school in Maryland, the most important coach in America. But this guy that wrote the book, he's a Pulitzer Prize winning author, spent a season with him learning what he taught his athletes. And what he taught them was that you can change, things can be different. He came out here, I was so impressed by him, we had him come out, have a physical at our program, and he gave a talk to all the coaches in the private schools throughout the county. And he had all those coaches in the room. I was in the room with 200 coaches lying there. Might have been 200, might have been 175, but they were all there. Coaches, tough guys, right? He said, now write down 2 squares in your paper right in front of you. And in the first square, he says, think of somebody in your life who humiliated you when you were young. Somebody who emotionally or physically made you feel badly about yourself. You did something wrong, you stole something, you missed a block, you missed a tackle, you didn't do something right, didn't show up at practice, failed a test. But somebody who beat you up on that emotionally or physically, mentally, and made you feel badly about yourself and just eroded your self-esteem. He says, close your eyes, think about that person, and then put their initials in that first square. And raise your hand when you're done. Within 20 seconds, everybody, every coach in the room had that guy or girl put the initial down. They all had their hands up. He said, now think about somebody in your life when you've done something that you were not proud of, something that was not consistent with your value system, where you made a mistake, you did something wrong, and somebody in your life picked you up and said, you're better than that, I believe in you. And they made you feel like you were okay even though you were not perfect. And they made you feel better about yourself, and they helped you try again. And they made you help you on your way to fulfilling your best destiny. He said, now think about who that person was. Write their initials with your eyes closed, and then raise your hand. 15 seconds, man, everybody's hand in the room. And then he said this. He said, every one of you as a coach from now on, and I would say this for all the educators, every one of you teachers from now on have a choice for every student you have in your class to be in one of those boxes. Now, which one of those boxes do you want to be in? And everybody just went, ooh, they got it, you know. There's everybody who's come through anything, and most successful people have been through ups and downs, failures and successes. They've lost it, they've gained it, they've come back again. But you know what? Everybody who's been through things has had somebody who was there when they needed them, somebody who made them feel better, who helped them through a tough time, put their arm around them, said, you're better than that, you can do it, I'm going to be here with you. That's what teachers can do. They can listen better, they can understand more, they can not just have a transactional relationship where they're having people memorize facts, they can help them think, they can notice something. He said another thing. He said, my deal is his team won. He came out and had a physical, as I said. They won 5 state championships in a row. I said, you must have amazing athletes at that small school. He says, no, maybe we got one kid. They won 5 state championships. They just won the one before they came out to see me. He said, we got maybe one kid in our whole team this year that can play college football. I said, really? And he won the state championship. He said, yeah. I said, how do you do it? He says, well, our job as a coach, he says, we have a concept that every kid can do one thing well. And our job is to find out what that one thing is and then put them in a position where they can accomplish that. I said, well, give me an example. He said, we got one kid, he's not very fast, he's not very strong, but he can run straight. We put him on passing downs. He said, we got a pretty good lineman and center and the guard. He said, we can split their 2 linemen. He can run on passing downs. They split the guys. He can run right between them. He said he's got 5 sacks this year, and the kids made him co-captain. So to answer your question, I think as teachers, the job is to get behind the eyes of the students we're teaching and understand what they need. And Mark talks about holistic teaching, holistic human, personal teaching. Everybody needs something different. So what is it the students need? They don't have to meet everybody's needs, but if the students just understand that they care, it's trusting and caring. And if the students understand that the teachers and professors they're trustworthy, and they really care about them as a student, and you can come to me anytime and talk to me, and I'll be willing to help you. I'll help you find something good about you, and I'm going to help you succeed. Everybody who's done well, it's amazing how influential one person can be in that position in somebody else's life.
I mean, ridiculously powerful. And the idea that you are either you're in one box or the other, or you're forgotten, right? It's one of those kind of, you have an intentional choice of deciding which box you want to get into is a really big deal. I just want to brag on this man for a second also, because related to your question, as we built out our concept of whole human education, like our kind of theory of work is that every student who comes to National University does not come for a degree. We think they come to change their lives. The degree is a means to an end. Every single student we have, when you talk to them about why they're here, it's not because they want a degree, it's because they have a vision of where they want to go. And so we think that we want to help give them the credentials, the human connections, the experiences that are going to help them change their lives. But that whole human support is really important. And as Lee is looking at our whole human support, we were focusing heavily on things like the financial support, the career support, the familial support, psychosocial support. But one of the things he said is like, you have got to be honest. Like, one of the things that many of your students are going to need is wellness. Like, they have to know how to take care of themselves in this larger process. So we've got to get more intentional about that. So we have a university-wide initiative now on research and practice, trying to think about how we can be the best university in the country at engaging our students in this conversation on wellness. We think it's that important for our Anders, and that's majorly catalyzed because of the work that you've done with us. Our Dean of Students, by the way, loves this. J.B. Robinson has leaned into this in the biggest way, and it's become a kind of centerpiece of what we're doing on the whole human side. It's all really good stuff. Nancy, do we have any time left, or are we totally done?
We're pretty much out of time. If you don't mind just taking
Yeah, I just want to give you one final chance. Any final admonitions for folks who are, again, DNA is not your destination. You have so much internal choice. Any final words of wisdom for the folks as they're thinking about how they take this talk home with themselves and think about writing their own next stories?
Yeah, I think we all can have huge influences on other people. We all want to help other people. We want to be a big influence and I think at the end of our lives, we all want to feel like our life was worthwhile and the world is better because we existed, right? And what I would say is the best thing you can do to help other people is do it yourself. Be whole yourself, because everybody is like kids and their parents. They hear what their parents say, but they watch what they do. And so the best thing you can do for other people in a relationship, the best thing you can do for students is mirror and monitor healthy behavior yourself. Because if you're your best self and you're really there for yourself, then people are going to figure that out. They're going to trust you, and they're going to be willing to learn from you, and you can be a meaningful influence in their lives too.
Thank you so much for everything. Let's give him a big round of applause. And we'll turn it back to Nancy.
All right. Well, this was absolutely fantastic, and there are so many questions people are curious about. So I think everyone in the studio audience here as well as online, look forward to part 2 of this conversation in the future, because people learn so much, and we would love to invite Dr. Rice back in the future. But in the meantime, we have a very exciting speaker series coming up next month with Gary Ridge, who I'm sure many of you know. He also happens to be a board member for National University, so hope some of you can join us then on August 25th. And then we have a lot of other events that are coming up for alumni, students, faculty, staff, and our friends. And I'm going to step away just for a moment.
Yeah, go for it.
All right.
Walk
Sorry
right
about that. All right. So we have the Cal State Games presented by National University. Speaking of athletes and kids that are really getting the kind of training to be competitive in 22 sports, that will be this Friday at UCSD, the opening ceremonies. We've got 7,000 kids from across the state competing at 50 different venues in the next couple weeks. So pretty exciting. One thing that we found is meaningful to our staff, students, and faculty is certainly our new National University Service Corps, and we have a day of service coming up at the San Diego Food Bank this week. Students interacting is also another thing that's important as far as their student journeys. So we have Navigator Networking on the 23rd. Also, we have an active alumni association. You're welcome to participate. Look at the alumni site. Career transition coming up, and then also on August 4th, Sanford Harmony is Leading Through Change is the title of the next presentation. But we want to most definitely thank Dr. Lee Rice and certainly our president, Dr. Milliron, for being such a great interviewer today. Thank you. And just again, want to extend our appreciation to Heather and Lindsay and our team for helping support our speaker series. We look forward to episode 71 next month, but we really hope that this has been very insightful for all of you. And I know I've gone to Dr. Rice as a doctor, and I have made some changes, not as many as I could, but we've all learned a lot, and I hope that it makes a difference in, how you lead your life and think about your future. So thank you so much. Appreciate all of you.